Jayo Kunj Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunj Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunj Bihari Jayo Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Nitai Gora Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gora Hari Bol Nitai Gora Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gora Hari Nitai Gora Haribol, 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 Nitai Gora Haribol, Nitai Gora Haribol. Nitai Gora Premanandi, Hari Haribol, Shri Nam Sankirtan ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Rottama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10th, Chapter 60, verse number 35. Satyam bhayadeva gunebhya urukramantaha sete samudra upalambhana matra atma nityam kadindriya ganaiha krita vigrahastvam त्वत्सेवकैर्नृपपदं विधूतं तमोऽन्धम् सत्यं भयाद इव गुणेभ्य उरुक्रमान्तः शेते समुद्र उपलम्भन मात्र आत्मा नित्यं कदिन्द्रियगणैः कृत विग्रहस्त्वं त्वत्सेवकैर्नृपपदं विधूतं तमो अन्धम् सत्यं भयाद इव गुणेभ्य उरुक्रमान्तः शेते समुद्र उपलम्भन मात्र आत्मा नित्यं कदिन्द्रिय गणैः कृत विग्रहस्त्वं त्वत्सेवकैर्नृपपदं विधूतं तमो अन्धम् Mataji. So word to word meaning Satyam, true, Bhayat, out of fear, Iva, as if, Gunebhya, of the material modes, Urukrama, O you who perform transcendental feats, Antah, within, Sete, you have lain down, Samudre, in the ocean, Upalambhana Matraha, pure awareness, Atma, the Supreme Soul, Nityam, always, Kata, bad, Indriya Ganaiha, against all the material senses, Krit Vigraha, battling, Tvam, you, Tvat, your, Sevakaiha, by the servants, Nripa, of a king, Padam, the position, Vidhutam, rejected, Tama, darkness, Andha, blind. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace C.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Yes, my Lord Urukrama, you lay down within the ocean as if afraid of the material modes, and thus, in pure consciousness, you appear within the heart as the super soul. You are always battling against the foolish material senses, and indeed, even your servants reject the privilege of royal dominion, which leads to the blindness of ignorance. Purport. In text 12, Lord Krishna said, Rajabhyo bibhyatah subhru samudram sharanam gatan. Out of fear of kings, we took shelter in the ocean. Here Srimati Rukmini Devi points out that the actual rulers of this world are the gunas, the material modes of nature, which impel all living beings to act. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that because Lord Krishna fears that his devotee will come under the influence of the modes of nature and become entangled in sense gratification, he enters the internal ocean of their hearts, where he remains as the omniscient super soul, Upalambhana Matra Atma. Thus, he protects his devotees. The word Upalambhana Matra also indicates that the Lord is the object of meditation for his devotees. In text 12, Lord Krishna also said, Balavadbhi Krishna Dveshan Krita Dveshan. We created enmity with the powerful. Here Srimati Rukmini Devi points out that it is the material senses which are actually powerful in this world. The Supreme Lord has taken up the battle against sense gratification on the part of his devotees, and thus he is constantly trying to help them in their struggle for spiritual purity. When the devotees become free of unwanted material habits, the Lord reveals himself to them, and then the eternal loving relationship between the Lord and his devotees becomes an irrevocable fact. In the same verse, Krishna stated, Tyakta Nripa Shanan, we renounce the royal throne. But here Srimati Rukmini Devi points out that the position of political supremacy in this world usually implicates so called powerful leaders in the darkness and blindness. As the saying goes, power corrupts. Thus, even the Lord's loving servants tend to shy away from the political intrigue and power politics. The Lord Himself, being completely satisfied in His own spiritual bliss, would hardly be interested in occupying mundane political positions. Thus, Srimati Rukmini Devi correctly interprets the Lord's actions as evidence of His supreme transcendental nature. So let us start with prayers. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं सादवैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च नम ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामिने गौरत्विषे नमः हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कानचन गौरांगी श्रीराधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna. So we have 3 4 more verses. We'll just read the translation and one verse has purport also. So today we are supposed to cover from 30 to 35. I'll read the translation for verse number 30. I also wanted to see your face with lips trembling in loving anger, the reddish corners of your eyes throwing sidelong glances, and the line of your beautiful eyebrows knit in a frown. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains here that normally by the Lord's transcendental desire, his pure devotees reciprocate with him in such a way that they satisfy his spiritual desires. But Rukmini's love was so strong that a unique mood predominated in this situation, and thus instead of becoming angry, she fainted and fell to the ground. Far from displeasing Krishna, however, she increased his transcendental ecstasy by exhibiting her all encompassing love for him. Text 31. The greatest pleasure worldly householders can enjoy at home is to spend time joking with their beloved wives. My dear timid and temperamental one. Text number 32. Shukadeva Goswami said, O King, Queen Vaidarbhi was fully pacified by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and understood that his words had been spoken in jest. Thus she gave up her fear and that her beloved. Thus she gave up her fear that her beloved would reject her. Text 33. Smilingly bashfully as she cast charming, affectionate glances upon the face of the Lord, the best of the males, Rukmini spoke the following: O descendant of Bharata. Text number 34. Shri Rukmini said, actually, what you have said is true, O lotus eyed one. I am indeed unsuitable for the Almighty Personality of Godhead. What comparison is there between the Supreme Lord, who is master of the three primal deities, and who delights in his own glory, and myself a woman of mundane qualities, whose feet are grasped by fools? Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami lists the faults of Lord Krishna had described in himself that he claimed disqualified him from being Rukmini's husband. These include incompatibility, fearfulness, taking shelter in the ocean, quarreling with the powerful, abandoning his kingdom, uncertainty as to his identity, acting against ordinary standards of behavior, having no good qualities, being praised falsely by beggars, aloofness, and lack of desire for family life. The Lord claimed that Rukmini had failed to recognize these bad qualities in him. Now she begins to respond to all the Lord's statements. First, she responds to Sri Krishna's statement in text 11 of this chapter. Kasman no Vavarshe Asaman. Why did you select us who are not equal to you? Here Srimati Rukmini Devi says that she and Krishna are certainly not equal. For no one can be equal to the Supreme Lord. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur further points out that in her extreme humility, Rukmini is identifying herself with the Lord's external energy, which is in fact her expansion. Rukmini being the goddess of fortune. Hare Krishna. So I seek the blessings of all the devotees who are present here, especially Acharyanpu and all other senior Vaishnavas, so that we can speak something for our own purification and for the glorification of the Lord. So here again, one very wonderful uh, pastime of Krishna is going on, where Krishna is teasing Rukmini, and so many wonderful purports have been given by Srila Prabhupada, and so many acharyas have given so many wonderful understanding of the dealings between Krishna and Mother Rukmini. So one thing we can see that in this world we all have desire to see some heroes, and we also have desire to see what is going on between those heroes and heroines and everyone, right? And we have a lot of curiosity, right, that we want to see what is going on, and what is the reciprocation between them. And that's why so many people, they want to go and watch movies, right? And not only they watch movies, but they also are always hooked to uh, the various sources of information which they can get about those people, right? So one thing we have to understand, that this tendency is actually for Krishna. This tendency is actually for Krishna. Whatever material emotions we exhibit in this material world are actually for Krishna, right? Sometimes people, they there are so many things. Sometimes we hear from people their emotions, their feelings, and sometimes you may hear some song which are describing the love of this material world, right? Like many times people say, oh, whether you are the source of pleasure or you are the source of happiness for me, but you are my life, right? But actually that is for Krishna. That is for Krishna. Whether Krishna is the source of pleasure or happiness, it may, of course, Krishna is always the source of happiness, but sometimes it may happen that we may be, the devotee may be in trouble or the devotee may be in happiness, but he is our life, right? So this is the way we have to transform our emotions, or this is the actual, these are the actual emotions which we should have, not that the mundane emotions. And Krishna, when he comes to this material world, he comes to exhibit all these wonderful pastimes so that the living entities can get attracted to the real thing. If we are not attracted to the real thing, then we will get attracted to the temporary, illusory things of this material world. Like in device sessions, we are taught that the dharma of living entity is to love and serve, right? So if we are not loving and serving Krishna and his devotees, then what will happen? We will love and serve someone else, something else, in a very material and mundane way. And many times when people don't have anything to serve, then what they do? They bring dogs or they bring animals and they start serving. So yes, to serve animals is fine. We can do that also, because all living entities are actually the children of Krishna. So that's okay. But point is, ultimately the loving propensity should be directed first towards Krishna and then towards any other living entity. And when it is directed first towards Krishna and then towards any other living entity, then our love is complete for everyone. If we are not having proper understanding of our own position, and if we don't have proper understanding of who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what is our relationship with Him, and if we don't see other living entities in relationship with Krishna, then our love for the living entities which we show here is actually incomplete. It is not complete, right? So that's why that love gets hampered, and that love also, when different material situations are there, that love becomes conditional, right? So that's why when we develop love for Krishna, slowly we will start developing love for everyone, and all the divine qualities which Krishna is exhibiting, his devotees also start exhibiting all those wonderful divine qualities, right? So that's why Krishna, his love for all the living entities is unconditional. Here we see that Krishna is very much worried that the living entity may fall prey to the illusory energy, right? Of course, everything is actually created by Krishna. Krishna is the source of everything. But still, he is very much worried. So, in order to guide the living entity, when the living entity will need my help, right? So, as soon as the living entity little bit shows any symptom, okay, now they need my help. Now, so then immediately Krishna starts giving the intelligence from within to the living entity to guide him back to him, right? So that's why Krishna, no matter where the living entity goes, right, whether he is in the body of a demigod or he is in the body of the lowest of the creatures in this material world, Krishna is always there with you as a companion, right? And his love for us is always unconditional. So when Dhruva Maharaj, he was very much disturbed by the words of his stepmother, and then he went to his mother for guidance. And the mother says that you go and worship Lord Vishnu, and when you will get darshan of Lord Vishnu, you will experience love that is millions of times more than the love that is millions of times more than the love between a mother and a child, right? So that's why the love for Krishna is very much unconditional. And when devotees they develop love for Krishna, so their love also becomes very unconditional, their love also becomes very much complete like Krishna's love. So that's why we were discussing with some devotee or some people that if you really want to have good friends, if you really want to have genuine friends, then develop friendship with devotees, right? If you really want to, like we were there was some discussion going on, and then we described little bit about the spiritual world. And we said how in the spiritual world everyone is free from envy. They are not looking forward to pull each other down, right? They always want to they always want to help each other to go closer to Krishna. They are not envious of each other. In this material world, the material emotion is as soon as we see someone who is better than us, immediately we start becoming envious, and we have a tendency to pull him down, right, to our platform, right? And for in this material world, uh, just like a devotee, he is paradukha dukhi. When Parikshit Maharaj he heard about the description of the hellish planets, so he became of course for him he was it was sure he was completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. He was a pure devotee even before getting the curse, and after getting the curse all the more without any eating, without drinking any water, without sleeping, he was continuously hearing Krishna Katha. Right? So he was completely absorbed in Krishna Katha. For him, it was sure that he will go back home, back to Godhead. But then he was asking for other living entities that Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. But then Parikshit Maharaj, he was asking for other living entities for their welfare. He started asking, is there any way by which these living entities can be brought out of this cycle of birth and death? They can be saved from going to hell? So Parikshit Maharaj was actually paradukha dukhi. He was more concerned about others' happiness and how to make others happy than his own happiness. Right? So that's why the devotees of the Lord, they are concerned more about others. They are concerned how to make others happy. And that's why they always go out with the message of Krishna consciousness to help others, to make them also Krishna conscious so that they can be eternally happy in their life. Right? So that's why in the spiritual world, the devotees are not uh, envious of each other. They are free from envy. And when we develop our spiritual emotions, when we advance in Krishna consciousness, then we also become free from envy. We don't have that tendency to pull others down. We are not jealous of others. So that's why when we want to have real, genuine relationships, if at all you want to have real, genuine relationships, then you should develop relationship with devotees of Lord, right? And just like Lord's love is unconditional, similarly, the spiritual master's love for the living entities is also unconditional. Hmm? Once the spiritual master accepts the living entity, he never gives the living entity up, right? He is always there. That's why it is said, Prabhupada used to say that if in this life you don't complete your devotional service, then the Guru has to come back, or the Guru will send some representative. So the commitment between the living entity and the spiritual master is is till the time the living entity goes back home, back to Godhead, and even after that also, right? So that's why uh, the love for the spiritual master, the love of the spiritual master for the living entities is also unconditional. It is also completely spiritual. And that's why we see in so many occasions where Srila Prabhupada, he was, his disciples, they went away from Krishna consciousness. But still, Srila Prabhupada was their well-wisher and he always wished well for them. Once some devotee, he was taking a lot of responsibilities in the mission. And then after some time, he went away and fell into sense gratification. So Srila Prabhupada writes a letter to him. He says, just because once you have chanted Hare Krishna Mahamantra purely in Vrindavan, so that's why Krishna will take you back home, back to Godhead. Right? So that's why in so many occasions we have seen that how uh, like devotees, they went away from Krishna consciousness, they were illusioned, they were into the sense gratification, but somehow or other the situations became such that at some point of time they all returned back and they all went back home, back to Godhead. Such situations were arranged in so many uh, devotees lives. So that is one thing which we see here, that how uh, we have this tendency of looking into the material things, but actual real things are in the spiritual world. Actual real things is in the association of the Vaishnavas. And here then some many more wonderful things are described in the purport, verse number 35, which says that the Lord and his devotees, they are not interested in the power of this material world, right? So the Lord and his devotees, they are uh, like even the devotees, of course, Lord is the supreme person, he owns everything. So for him, not being interested in material power is something like he isn't, for him he is not interested in controlling the people, like just like for us it's like when we see material people who are kings, they are more interested in controlling the people, exploiting the people. But Lord is such a master that he is not interested in controlling or exploiting, right? And for him everything is actually a loving reciprocation for the living entities. Even this material world is created to reciprocate love, right? The living entities, they have desire to enjoy separately with Krishna, right? So that's why he says, okay, you have desire to enjoy separately, but you cannot do that. It's not possible, but you can have a feeling. You can go there and just feel, just go there and try it out and see how it feels like. And when you become dissatisfied, I am there with you. You come back to me, right? So that's why the Lord is not at all interested in all these things. And if like Lord is so wonderful that he has created this material world and remains invisible. He is not there in front of us anywhere. Sometimes people deny the existence of God. So he is not there to show off that, okay, I am there. And he is not there to prove his existence, that I am there and you see and you abide by me, otherwise you will suffer, right? So Lord is such master, right? And similarly his devotees, the devotees of the Lord, even when they accept the responsibilities, the devotees are not interested in becoming kings or holding the power, but sometimes Lord wants them to do that, because for the general masses it is best if the ruler is Krishna conscious, right? So that's why Krishna, he wanted to make Pandavas as the king of the entire world, because they were Krishna conscious. And when the king is Krishna conscious, then he is free from the tendencies to exploit, he is free from the tendencies to control people, and he rules in such a way that people uh, in general, they go closer to Krishna. They advance in their spiritual consciousness, not in their material consciousness. Just like we see in this material world, the rulers are so much materially oriented. As soon as they get the material power for 5 years, so for 5 years they will rule, and they will earn for their 5 generations, and such they will earn so much that maybe their 5 generations will not have to work, right? They will all eat nicely, sleeping, right? So the rulers are they are filled with that exploitative tendency, they are filled with that controllership mentality. If someone doesn't abides by them, then they try to dominate, they try to uh, control that person by force, right? The sometimes the rulership, the kingship or the rulership in this material world is not by inspiration, right? Like Parikshit Maharaj and all these great rulers, Yudhishthir Maharaj, when they ruled, they were they were accepted by the masses. Their rule was by inspiration. People wanted them to become kings, not that they wanted to become the king. After the war of Kurukshetra, Yudhishthira Maharaj did not want to become the king. Krishna told him that now you should be the king, right? So the great devotees of Lord, they didn't want to be the kings, right? They were made, the situations forced them to become the rulers, and it was the rule by inspiration, right? Just like we see in this temple. So we were recently hearing from Gaurang Prabhu how in temple everyone is a voluntary servant, right? So in the material world, you pay people and you get things done, right? But when it comes to the spiritual services and the spiritual management, it is completely different, right? You cannot hire people here and get things done because it is completely different, right? So here the spiritual management or the spiritual whatever we can say, it works by inspiration, right? It works by that the people have respect for their authorities. People are inspired by the wonderful dealings of their authorities, and then they are inspired to dedicate their lives, right? So Srila Prabhupada would say that there are so many wonderful, all these wonderful devotees who are my disciples. I don't pay them even a single penny. Still, they are ready to give their lives for me. So what was that thing which was, uh, which was inspiring them to dedicate their lives, right? So it was the spiritual inspiration, right? Which Srila Prabhupada he gave to all these people, right? So that's why in this material world, the rulership of this material world and the spiritual kingship or spiritual rulership, it is completely different, right? That's why people in this material world, they continue talking about Ram Rajya, right? So what is that Ram Rajya? So Srila Prabhupada and other devotees, they would say that they want Ram Rajya, but they don't want Lord Ram, right? So first you bring like Krishna or Lord Ram in the picture, then the Ram Rajya will automatically be will come, right? Otherwise, you will keep dreaming about the dream world, but it will never come, right? We There are so many. Sometimes we have seen that these these wonderful stories, these movies, they are all one sense. If you study properly and try to analyze, they are all replicas of what happens in the spiritual world, right? In They all are the replicas of what happens in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, there is one hero, there is one heroine. Krishna is there, Srimati Radharani is there, and they are doing so many wonderful pastimes. So here they try to replicate that. There is one hero, there is one heroine, and then there are some problems. There is this, there is that, and then sometimes they also show a world where there are no problems, where everything is completely ideal, and they want to go to that world. Sometimes it is shown that they get some special techniques, technology is developed, and they go to some place, and that place resembles like the spiritual world where there are no problems and everything is completely perfect there, right? So it is their desire to go back home, back to Godhead, but they don't know. They are unaware of this, and they are trying to find out something here in this material world. And they're expressing those desires by all these creative things, by all these poetry, by all these movies, by all these novels, by all these stories, right? So that's why George Harrison says that he says everyone is looking for Krishna. Some people know, some people don't know. So ultimately, everyone is looking for Krishna to whatever endeavors they are doing. When they are doing sense gratification, they are actually looking for Krishna. They are trying to get that satisfaction which comes when we reciprocate love with Krishna and his devotees, but they don't get that. So they try something, they are not happy, they go to something else. They try that also, they are not happy, they go to something else, right? So if the things would have been really satisfying, then why do we need to change the object of gratification, right? Like we were discussing with some devotees. So then I asked them, okay, what is your favorite dish? So one person, he said gulab jamun. So I said, if I give you gulab jamun every day, 3 times, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, two gulab jamuns, not more, how many days you'll be able to eat it? He said, within 1 week I will get bored and I would not like to eat it, right? So if that object would have been if it was the source of your happiness, then why you get bored of it? And why you have to change it? Why you have to change it? People look for changing partners, people look for changing their object of gratification. The very fact is they are not satisfied. They feel now by changing the object of gratification, I will get satisfaction. But the same story repeats there also. Right? So just like devotees are there, they keep doing same thing again and again. They keep chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day. They keep singing Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day. They keep sometimes it's like because sometimes the devotees they keep singing same tune every day, right? When you want to hear some mundane song, how many days you can see it? How many days you can hear it, right? Like sometimes like if you have some favorite song, right, and you want to see how much favorite it is for you, so what you should do is set it as your alarm in the morning, right? So sometimes it is the normal tendency that whatever is wakes up from sleep, it irritates us, right? Whatever wakes up from sleep, it actually irritates us, right? So you put it as an alarm in the morning, and I can assure you within 2 weeks you'll develop hatred for that favorite song, right? So that's why I never put my favorite Hare Krishna tunes as alarm. I I put mundane alarms. Mundane means whatever normal music, so that if I develop hatred, I will put something else, but no spiritual thing, so that I don't develop hatred for those things, right? So the point is, we get bored, we get we develop hatred for all those things, right? Sometimes people have their favorite movies. They say, "Oh, this movie was my favorite. I watched it 50 times, 60 times." But how much more? You got bored ultimately, right? So when we talk about the spiritual things, when we go to yatras, we know what is going to happen. We know what Maharaj is going to speak in the past times. We know very well. We have heard them thousands of times. We have heard them personally. We have heard them in the Bhagavatam classes. We have also heard them. We have read them in the Bhagavatam. We keep hearing those lectures again and again. Still, we don't get bored out of it, right? Because these things are completely spiritual, right? And that's why it says that the spiritual things are such that every time you hear them, you will feel something new, right? And in uh, uh, one of the lectures we were hearing, so uh, it was said that if you get bored of spiritual things, right? If you get bored, if you feel that, oh, I have already heard it, and maybe it doesn't now it doesn't appeals to me. So, so it was said that if you feel like that, it means you never heard it actually properly. If you would have heard it, then you would have never felt like that, right? So if you feel bored after chanting Hare Krishna, means we have not chanted properly Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That's why we feel bad, or we feel bored, or we feel exhausted, right? We feel exhausted. Yesterday, we were interacting with some devotees. They said, after reading Bhagavad Gita, we feel exhausted, and like Arjuna, heard Bhagavad Gita and he became very enthusiastic, right? But our enthusiasm goes away. So I said, if your enthusiasm goes away, then whose problem it is? It is your problem or Bhagavad Gita's problem? So then they said, no, 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 it is our problem. Then I said that, first of all, we have to hear Bhagavad Gita from a proper source, and we have to hear it in the right mood and right attitude, right? And then definitely it will inspire us, because the spiritual inspiration is so powerful that the entire mission is running by that, and people are working so hard. What was the inspiration of Srila Prabhupada? It was spiritual. And he worked so hard day and night just for the pleasure of Krishna, right? And for the pleasure of his spiritual master. So spiritual emotions are so powerful, right? So that's why ultimately we have to understand that in this material world, we will be faced with both the things. We will be faced with material things every now and then when you are interacting with the material world, especially if you are a householder, you will have to interact with the world, right? In this material world, people are obliged to work. How wonderful it would have been that if we would not have to work, right? And in the spiritual world, they don't have any work. They have only their only work is loving reciprocation and wonderful pastimes with Krishna. Every day Krishna goes for herding the cows, and all the gopas they go with him. They have no work. They don't have to go for a software job every day in the morning, or they don't have to go for a coaching job, right? Like I go for the coaching. So they don't have to worry about that. Every day in the morning, get ready, go for the, go and then deliver your classes, come back. And it's like, yes, you have material tendencies, they get engaged some way or other. The point is that how wonderful it would have been that if you would not have to work, right? But in this material world, people are obliged, right? But in the spiritual world, no one is obliged to work, right? So yes, as a householder, we will have to interact with so many material things, and we will have to hear so many material emotions. We have to deal with them. We have to deal with so many material people, right? And we can clearly see the contrast. We can see the contrast here in the spiritual circle. We can see how devotees are dealing with each other. We can see how in the Bhagavatam, wonderful spiritual things are described. We can see the pastimes of a spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada, how wonderful things are happening. And we can also see the material things, how people deal with each other, right? How it's like, sometimes it's like, if you, it's like in companies, what happens? As long as you're useful for them, you're there. If you're not useful, you're fired, whoever you are, right? There is no relationship, nothing. So one teacher was there. He was a very experienced person, and he had 14 years of experience in teaching. And he was like, so whenever I would go, both of us would sit. He was teaching chemistry, I was teaching physics. So we would discuss, we would talk. And he was like, sir, जॉब की कोई कमी नहीं है, और मेरे को अभी 10 ऑफर ऑलरेडी मेरे पास रखे हुए हैं, और मेरे को अभी फ़ोन आया था 3 दिन पहले एक रेप्यूटेड कोचिंग इंस्टीट्यूशन से, तो आप चिंता मत करिए, आप टेंशन मत लीजिए, ज़्यादा एंग्जाइटी, मतलब ही वाज, आई नेवर सेड आई एम इन एंग्जाइटी, वो मेरे को बोलता रहता था। मैं कहा मैं तो एंग्जाइटी में नहीं हूँ, व्हाई यू आर टेलिंग मी? सो ही वुड कीप सेइंग, एंड ही सेड अभी मेरा सीईओ से मुलाकात हुआ, एंड दिस हैपेंड, दैट हैपेंड, आई वेंट टू दिस, एंड देन आई टोल्ड देम ऑल द थिंग्स, एंड दे एग्रीड टू ऑल माय डिमांड्स, दिस दैट, and things were happening. So I said, maybe he's really the hoga. He was experienced, and those who are experienced, those who are performing, they can keep the people who are managers under their control. So maybe he was like that type of person, and very, very, we can say very proud of all his wonderful things he was doing. Then suddenly uh, last week I went to the coaching, and so means last to last week I went, some different teacher came. So I was knowing this person would take holiday anytime. He was such person, he would say, उनको बता देना, मतलब वो जो सेंटर उनको बता देना, सीईओ को बोल देना, और जो हेड है, एकेडमिक हेड, उसको भी बोल देना मेरा छुट्टी है। उनको 1 महीना पहले मैंने मेल लिख दिया, एंड दे कैन नॉट डू एनीथिंग, जस्ट टेल देम, ओके? और अगर वो रिप्लेसमेंट हाजिर अगर नहीं करते हैं तो मेरा इस्तीफा रेडी है। So something like that. Now last to last week when I went, different teacher came. So I thought maybe he must have gone. He takes holidays every now and then. So he must have gone. Next day so next day, next week I went again, different teacher. He was not there. So then I got doubt. What happened? Something problem happened. So then I checked. कि सर आप आ रहे हैं, क्या हो गया? बोले पता नहीं सर, बताया नहीं। मैंने कहा वेयर ही इज, ही माइट बी इन हॉलीडे। So I got doubt. Something has happened. Then I called up some people to know what happened. So they said, we don't know, sir. He's on holiday. He said he is going for 2 weeks of holiday. Then after some time, the students told me, sir, he left. What will happen? So then I said, okay, give me his number. I'll talk to him. So then I talked to him. I called him. And then I asked him, what happened exactly? Then he told me. First he said, actually, sir, these people were not sticking to their promises. And whatever whatever they had promised me, whatever appraisal they had promised me, they had not given. So that's why I left. Actually, I left. मैंने कहा कैसे हुआ, आपने छोड़ दिया? बोले हाँ, I left. I said okay. Then we talked for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Afterwards he says, उन्होंने तो मुझे 11 तारीख को ही बता दिया था कि सर आपको 30 तारीख तक लास्ट है, उसके बाद आपको और कंटिन्यू नहीं करना है. So then I understood कि these people only had told him. So then I asked, but I was trying to know, directly तो बोल नहीं सकते क्या reason था. So I was trying to know what was the reason. And ultimately I understood that he was a great performer, but he was not fitting in their expectations. Right? So when he was not fitting, these people, same people who respected him, who put him on their head, and he was dominating, he was doing everything, but ultimately when he was not useful, they removed him. So that is what is the material world, and that's how things go on in this material world. And we can exactly see the contrast, that how when people are useful, they are kept; when they are not useful, they are fired. And in the spiritual circle, whether he is useful, whether he is not useful, just I will end up with this last thing. When Srila Prabhupada was there were some many different type of devotees were brought to him. So some devotees were there, they were fond of sleeping. So they would keep sleeping and they would not do anything, right? So one devotee was there, Srila Prabhupada said, what service you can do? So he was like completely dull, and devotees wanted to remove him from the service. They wanted to remove him from the temple. They felt he's useless. But then Srila Prabhupada gave him a service. He said, you keep changing the cassette of my tape, something like that. And then this devotee would change the thing, and then he would take rest. And then he would get up, change the thing, he would take rest. And slowly, that devotee, he became a very advanced devotee, and he translated many books. So like that. So spiritual, uh, whatever the spiritual, in the spiritual circle, things are completely different, and we have to be very clear with our intelligence, that we should never get attracted to those things. Our intelligence should be very very clear. Whenever we see the material emotions, whenever we see the material things, sometimes we may have tendency to get impressed, but you should know what is what. You should know the reality, right? The reality of the spiritual things and the reality of the material things. So thank you all very much. I'm sorry if I have spoken something beyond my realizations. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, शिला प्रभुपाद की जय.